You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin.
Welcome to the show. I don't know why.
Why are you laughing?
Welcome to the show. Hello to new listeners, and welcome back to those of you who've been with us from the beginning. If you are enjoying this podcast, we would be immensely grateful if you would share it with friends and family. Follow at Heroes Podcast on Twitter and retweet our new episode announcements. Scribble our URL on the bathroom wall of your office building.
Hey, Mom, URL means website address.
Universal Resource Locator. Forget the DNS and just write
We're talking to my mom here.
192.447. This is our October Halloween horror show, episode 12, Star Beast.
What?
Yes, Dan. An early title for this movie was the completely laughable Star Beast.
That's terrible.
Thank the gods they decided to go with
Yeah.
Alien.
On the internet, no one can hear you scream. But they can see you type in all caps. So this is our spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
We are going to be talking about Alien from start to finish. So if you are sensitive about spoilers and you haven't seen the film yet, stop this episode now and check out one of our other episodes. Do you like dramas? Try our episode about The Shawshank Redemption, The Handmaid's Tale, Moonlight.
So good. And don't forget The Godfather and Rear Window. Maybe you prefer more lighthearted fare like The American President or Field of Dreams.
Are you an action fan? We have episodes on Die Hard, The Rock, Ready Player One, and The Dark Knight.
Lego Movie is next. We've covered them all, and we're not done yet. Here's to another year, Dan.
Is it bad luck to toast with coffee?
This is our 13th episode, and it comes out the day before Halloween. Our luck could not get worse. Drink up.
Alien was released by 20th Century Fox in 1979.
Wow, I feel so old.
Written by Ronald Shusett, or Shusett, and Dan O'Bannon, and directed by Ridley Scott. The film starred Tom Skerritt, Sigourney Weaver, Veronica Cartwright, Harry Dean Stanton, John Hurt, Yaphet Kotto, and Bilbo Baggins.
Man, Ian Holm is so good in this movie. Bolaji Bodejo played the part of the alien. Another actor considered for the role, Peter Mayhew, a.k.a. Chewbacca. Wow, that's the best Sand People impression I've heard since episode 0. Oh, no, it was the Walrus Man. It was the Walrus Man that you did. Jerry Goldsmith was nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Original Score. It was a fantastic, creepy score.
Yeah, yep.
The art direction and visual effects teams were both nominated for Oscars, but only the visual effects team won in their category.
Despite the sparse award show attention, the film was a commercial success. It enjoyed a worldwide box office gross of $203 million against an $11 million budget. Now, we do need to say that that includes the theatrical re-release in the early 2000s, 2003, I think, to coincide with the director's cut, which Ridley Scott says isn't really a director's cut because he's perfectly happy with the original.
Wow. Wait, a filmmaker perfectly happy with the original film?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Whereas here's the 6-hour Blade Runner with even more shots of Harrison Ford staring out the window. Fun fact, the Hungarian translation of the title of this film is The Eighth Passenger is Death.
That's awesome.
Wait, what is that? What does that sound?
Jeff, we seem to be receiving a distress signal from the direction of Zeta 2 Reticuli.
Can you pinpoint the exact location?
Signal's origin seems to be the moon-designated LV-426. What do you think?
Guess you better check it out. Act 1 begins with the ordinary world of common day. We see our main character in his status quo, normal life. Dan, in the beginning of Alien, we meet the crew of the United States commercial starship Nostromo. They are working class folks on their way back home from a mission in deep space, and they've just been awakened from hypersleep. We meet Dallas, a.k.a. the captain of the ship, played by Tom Skerritt. Kane, the executive officer, played by John Hurt. We meet Ripley, the warrant officer, played by Sigourney Weaver. Ash, the science officer, that's Ian Holm and his very foreboding eyes.
Yes.
Lambert is the navigator. She's played by Veronica Cartwright. In a great emotional performance. She's really the normal person in this movie who's terrified by all the things that would terrify you in real life.
I feel like I would react very similarly to her. Just be like, what is going God.
Yeah, she's like the hysterical one in the movie, but I'm like, yes, she's appropriately terrified of what's happening. Yes, get off the ship.
Right.
Parker, the engineer, played by Yaphet Kotto, whom I love as Kananga in the 1973 James Bond movie Live and Let Die. I was so excited, and I didn't remember that he was in this movie. Brett, the engineering tech, played by Harry Dean Stanton, who appeared to be the same age from his first performance in films to his last performance in film. He just was always that sort of like unshaven, rumpled guy with a cigar.
Maybe with the askew trucker hat.
Right, exactly. And we meet Jones the cat. Side note.
Yeah.
Balehi Badejo, the actor who played the alien,
Right.
was a Nigerian dude. He was 6'10", and he was cast because a crew member met him in a bar.
Yeah.
Alien is his only film credit.
Right.
And I don't know if they mentioned this on screen, but in the screenplay, by the way, the screenplay is amazing. It's this beautiful, it's almost like a haiku. That first sequence where we're just seeing the ship, the way it's described in the screenplay, I've never read a screenplay like that. The screenplay actually has a distinct narrative voice, is the best way I can describe it. If you get a chance, Google Alien Screenplay PDF and see if you can find it. I found a scan of the shooting screenplay.
Oh, neat.
And it's very different in terms of the dialogue. The scenes are all the same, but it's very different. The dialogue was a lot improvised on the set. Anyway, in the screenplay, the Nostromo is listed as a petroleum tanker and refinery, which struck me as weird because, I don't know, maybe this was like a comment on the energy crisis of the 1970s that we're sending ships into deep space to find oil. And I'm definitely not an astrophysicist, but it seems like there's a math problem in there somewhere in terms of like the energy balance of launching a ship to go find oil. But I love the idea. That we're so desperate for oil that we're in deep space searching for it.
Well, in the film, it's a mineral ore refinery that they're towing. So maybe somebody mentioned that. There's a piece of imagery in the opening shots of the film of the sleeping pods arranged like a daisy, like the petals of a flower. And when the canopies open, they all open simultaneously and very slowly, almost like a flower blooming.
Wow.
And what's inside a flower but pollen? And what is pollen for but to make other flowers? So these humans that are inside this technological flower bed contraption are just there to be hosts for new
deep. Did you read that somewhere? Did you just
no that was that struck me when I thank you for giving me credit.
Always a tone of surprise, but I will say, like, you've just peaked the podcast. Like, I definitely did not do any thinking that deep on this movie, so you have
it's just the image. It was so slow and deliberate. And especially when you see Kane waking up, he's the first one to wake up, and his arm just kind of raises really slowly and like pulls off one of the little sticky pads on his neck. Everything just seemed like a slow birth.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's very observant. So I have one other tidbit.
Oh, okay.
Lambert tells us early on that the Nostromo is near Zeta II Reticuli, which is a star in the southern constellation of Reticulum, which is 39 light years away. Do you know what other measurement is approximate to 39 light years?
No.
It's the distance known as, wait for it, 12 parsecs.
You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
Is this the first Star Wars callback in film history? Because it came out 2 years after Star Wars, and Ridley Scott has been quoted by saying Star Wars A New Hope and the Kubrick film 2001: Space Odyssey were both influences. I'm just saying that is deep geeking right there.
That is. You did good there, kid. Ooh. Proud of you.
One thing I found fascinating about this movie, and this is actually relevant to the hero's journey,
okay,
is that we don't know right away who the hero is. It's not apparent. Sigourney Weaver was not a big star. She'd been in Annie Hall. She'd done some TV, but she was not a big star.
Right.
And so they bury the lead in this movie.
Tom Skerritt was the headliner of this film.
That's right. He's been doing TV since the 60s. I mean, that guy, he's been working since he was...
I don't know.
Look it up. Google.
Okay. The call to adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge which renders them unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. The Nostromo has a computer operating system called Mother, and she has awakened the crew because she has intercepted a distress signal of unknown origin.
Right.
And we don't quite know yet, but there's orders to investigate this particular signal.
Right. Did you have more, or is that it?
No, that's
Okay.
a very simple call to adventure.
Agreed.
There's really not much else to be said.
Yeah. So that brings us to refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to engage in the adventure. Sometimes the energy of the refusal is expressed from within, sometimes from without. Again, we've got a really simple refusal of the call, in my opinion. Parker, the engineer, played by Yaphet Kotto, expresses refusal. He doesn't want to do anything that's not in his contract unless there's extra money in.
Yeah.
We are obligated under Section
Well, I hate to bring
8.
this up, but this is a commercial ship, not a rescue ship.
Right.
And it's not my contract to do this kind of duty. And what about the money? If you want to give me some money to do, I'd be happy to. Why?
I love that these crew members were working class people. They were not elite starfarers. They were not paramilitary. They're working class folks. And like anybody else, they're like, if I'm going to go check out some planet, I got to get hazard pay.
Yeah.
And Ash is the one, Ash, the science officer, played by Ian Holm, is the one who has to remind them that they must investigate or they're at risk of having to forfeit their whole contract.
Right. The next stage is meeting with the mentor, where the hero receives special counsel on how to operate in the special world. Joseph Campbell called this the supernatural aid, the unexpected assistance that comes to one who has undertaken their proper adventure. Now, I struggled with this one a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
There's not a whole lot of mentor energy in this film.
No, and I think that's typical of horror movies.
I was about to say that because this is a horror film, there's really not a lot of help. The characters are thrown into a desperate situation, and it's just up to them to survive or not.
Yeah.
However, what I did see as some kind of attempt to offer aid is the signal itself. Ripley feeds the signal into Mother, and Mother starts to translate it. And as Ripley is looking at the translation, she tells Ash, this appears to be a warning, not a distress call.
By the way, screen technology, in addition to petroleum, that technology has not evolved at all. It's still like crappy Atari-grade graphics.
Were you as upset about the screen reflecting or projecting onto the user's face like you were in The Rock?
Let's get to that when we get to it. That happens. I don't want to talk about it yet.
Another very weak aid offered to the characters is the space jockey. And this takes place a little bit later in the film, but when the crew is investigating the derelict ship on the moon, they find a crew member of the ship, dead, fossilized, kind of fused, as Dallas says, looks like he's growing out of his chair. And they find a wound in this organism's chest. And as Dallas says, the bones are bent outward, almost like he exploded from inside.
Right.
Now that plus the signal that Ripley interprets as a warning instead of a distress call or a call for help are the only two elements that I saw in this film where some outside force is telling them, go away. Do not be here. And just like in any horror film, those warnings are ignored, which drives the characters into further peril.
I noted both of those incidents, but I saw them as failed tests. The thing that I see is the meeting with the mentor, and this is the mentor throughout the movie, and like we discussed a second ago, the withholding of mentorship, I think, is an element of the horror film. And not just the withholding of mentorship, but the withholding of common sense. I mean, in a horror movie, one of the things is the characters make decisions that the audience wouldn't make, and we're screaming, no, this is going to go badly.
Right.
And then it goes badly.
Right.
But to me,
that's acceptable.
The only scene that qualifies as the meeting with the mentor is when Dallas goes to sit down and talk to Mother and has a conversation with Mother and then doesn't get enough info.
Yeah, everything does not compute.
Right. So to me, that's the meeting with the mentor, but it's almost like a Zen koan. You got to figure this out yourself. You're on your own.
Okay, sure. I think both are valid.
No,
interpretation.
My interpretation. No, I agree. I think we're both finding the same point, which is in a horror movie, there's a lack of mentorship.
Yeah.
And that's part of what creates the isolation and the fear.
Right.
Because there's no help. That brings us to crossing the threshold. the hero must pass a special barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. So the crew, all of them, for some reason, go to land on the surface of the planet that is the source of the distress signal. This is the first real horror movie element, in my opinion, because this is the space version of let's all go camping in the haunted murder woods with no flashlights. It's going to be fine. So to me, their landing on the planet is the crossing of the threshold.
And of course, there's a huge storm happening. They're not landing on, grassy fields with butterflies.
It's like, let's go into the woods and there's a storm, or let's go into the haunted house and here comes the snow and we're snowed in.
Yeah, exactly.
So to me, that landing is the crossing of the threshold.
Agree.
Well, that brings us to a very rapid close of Act 1.
Yeah.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll have Act 2.
Jeff, what have you been watching? What have you been reading? What have you been playing?
I haven't played video games in months, so I have not played anything.
Tragedy.
I know. I read 2 books.
Okay.
I listened to the audiobook The Art of Invisibility by Kevin Mitnick.
Oh.
He's a world-famous hacker, and so this book was about what it takes to leave no trace on the internet. And it was an eye-opening listening experience for me because I had a vague sense that we're always being watched and tracked. But the procedure you would have to follow to not be tracked on the internet is so complex and treacherous that I just was blown away. And in the last 15 days, I've done more to secure my data than I've done in the last 10 years. Wow. I mean, it's become like an obsession for me of like locking down all the things I can lock down. By no means am I invisible, but like how vulnerable all of this personal information, my entire livelihood, 10 years of digital photos, I mean, everything.
Yeah.
So it was terrifying, and I highly recommend it.
Okay.
The narrator, so the narrative voice of this nonfiction book is very snarky. This hacker's kind of like I guess if you want to leave all your data out there, cool. And the narrator really got that tone of voice, so it's really snarky, and I loved it.
Cool.
And then I finally read The Outsider, the new Stephen King novel.
Yes.
And
I saw your Instagram story about that.
I enjoyed it very much. It's classic King.
It's a big one, too.
Yeah, but it reads a fast read.
Really?
It's a standalone, but it does have a crossover character from the Detective Bill Hodges trilogy, which I enjoyed very much. It is classic King in that there is a supernatural bad guy, but it wasn't epic. It was sort of a smaller cast, and it's a very simple story in the classic King sense, focusing on the personal impact of the human beings experiencing this horrible thing and taking it on. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I watched Arrival with Amy Adams.
Yep.
And Jeremy Renner, and I really enjoyed it. Like some science fiction films, you have to swallow the premise and a couple of things that don't totally make sense. But once you swallow the premise, the effects were beautiful, the creatures were beautiful, the linguistic elements were really fascinating and astounding, the personal elements, the way they dealt with time. If you're a science fiction fan, it's one of the most original science fiction movies I've seen, like that and Ex Machina of the last 10 years are the ones that really pop out.
Wow, interesting.
And The Martian, I guess.
Okay.
And then I watched a movie that I will be proselytizing about for the next 3 months. It's called Instant Family.
Yeah.
And it is about the foster to adopt experience. It stars Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, and it's hilarious, and it gets it exactly right, what it's like to be a foster adopt parent. It's not afraid of being dark and funny and realistic. It was written and directed by Sean Anders, who gave us Daddy's Home, the Will Ferrell, Mark Wahlberg comedy. And it features your girl, Eliza Schlesinger, as one of the...
Very good pronunciation. I couldn't get through that.
As one of the potential adoptive moms, and she is hilarious. So that's what I read and watched and played. How about you, Dan?
Wow. I had a super productive month. I read 6 books.
Whoa!
I'll just go through them real quick. American Philosophy, A Love Story by John Kaag. That one was kind of a random selection. I'd never heard of it. I was unfamiliar with the author. Nobody recommended it to me. I just felt like reading some kind of different kind of nonfiction that I'd never read before. I don't know a whole lot about philosophy. It's not a subject I ever really explored. And as such, I think maybe that I didn't really dig into this quite like maybe I would have if I was a philosophy student or a fan.
Yeah.
But it was okay. I think if you're into philosophy. It was an interesting story, a memoir about a professor who is dealing with the dissolution of his marriage, and he goes to the estate of the old philosopher William Hawking, and he explores his library, which has been uncared for years. I listened to The Concrete Blonde, which is Bosch number 3. The Case is really good. It calls back to something in Bosch's past that he thought had been secured, and now it calls everything into doubt. I also listened on Audible to the X-Files Cold Cases, which you were listening to as well.
Right.
The first episode I was a little worried. It's a radio drama, and so the creators have to figure out how to use either dialogue or audio to describe what's going on. You don't have a narrator saying, Scully got out of the car and she saw a guy walking toward her with a gun.
Right.
You hear car door open and Scully, hey, what are you doing with that gun? Don't point that gun at me. Bang. Ow, you shot me with the gun you were holding. But I got over that pretty quickly, because then I started from a analytical point of view thinking, how else would you do that kind of a thing? So that was fun. But the first episode is one that deals with people who are being mind controlled. And so all the supporting characters talk like this. And I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. You've got David Duchovny, Gillian Anderson, but all the other people are just terrible voice actors. They're not. They were mind controlled, but you don't know that the first time you talk to them. But everything after that is great once I realized that that's what was going on.
I enjoyed that they brought back all these classic villains.
Yes.
They sort of resurrected, and they give you a bunch of backstory that you don't get in the series.
Yeah, it's great.
If you're an X-Files fan. Yeah.
Exactly. The Coming Storm by Michael Lewis, which is a very short, it's like 2.5 hours or something. It's a real short, basically a long news article about weather and how it's studied and the kind of information that we can get from it. Okay, 2 more and then I'm done.
Take your time. I'm fascinated.
My Italian Bulldozer.
What?
By Alexander McCall Smith, who is the author of the #1 Ladies Detective Agency, which is probably his big series. I read this because it was part of that wine book club that I'm a part of. Jeff, this is probably one of the worst books I've ever read in my life. It's the only book I've given 1 star on Goodreads.
Wow.
It's awful. Ridiculous. The dialogue is horrendous. Nobody talks like this. The situations that the main character finds himself in, the way his decisions are completely... I had no trust for this author.
Oh, no.
No trust. Oh, my God. I wrote an article about it on Book Thump, so... You can read that if you're interested in my scathing review.
That's bookthump.com.
It's a terrible book. However, palate cleanser, I then read Brandon Sanderson's debut novel, Elantris. Fantastic.
Is it fantasy?
Yes.
Okay, I'll read this one.
Read Elantris. Yeah, don't even bother with My Italian Bulldozer or any bulldozers. Elantris is excellent. Now, and Brandon Sanderson is now on my watch list.
He's the guy who took over Robert Jordan.
Correct.
Series, right?
He finished The Wheel of Time after Robert Jordan passed away. Excellent book. And I'm so glad that was the last book that I read before we started recording this, because I did not want to come in here to this segment and have to end it with
6 books. I'm so impressed with you.
Well, The Coming Storm is only 2.5 hours.
All right, we'll be back with Act 2 in just a moment.
Act 2 begins with tests, allies, and enemies. Once having traversed the threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. Now, because we don't really know who the hero of this story is yet,
right?
They all are potential allies, but they're also kind of shapeshifters. This is a group of normal humans in a stressful situation. So you've got some that are keeping their head, and some are losing their minds, and some are being difficult to deal with. And, it's a full representation of the various types of personalities that emerge in this kind of a situation. I wouldn't say that Parker and Brett, who are saying, we're not going to fix the ship until you guarantee that we're going to get more money out of our contract. I wouldn't call them enemies for doing that. Maybe threshold guardians, they're stalling. But I guess everybody on the ship at this point is a potential ally. Even some that appear to be allies now are very clearly not later.
I agree with that. I guess I saw the crew as allies. I think I saw Parker and Brett's incalcitrance to repair the ship just as kind of extensions of the situation they all find themselves in and their personality. And that's sort of ordinary world. Those guys are always the guys who are saying, more money, more money, more money.
Exactly. As far as enemies, obviously the xenomorph.
Right. The Star Beast.
The
Which I have to say, it is a beast. Alien doesn't quite capture its beastliness.
Jeez.
So I'm gonna go with I vote Star Beast.
You're reverting to Star Beast? Okay. Tests.
Oh, you're not gonna call out another enemy?
What, Ash?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was alluding to it earlier.
Oh, you're trying not to spoil.
I was trying not, but that's fine. Ash.
Definitely a shapeshifter an ally that becomes an enemy.
Right. So tests. The ship is severely damaged when it lands, and now Dallas, as the captain, is forced to kind of split resources. He takes Kane, himself, and Lambert. They put on suits, and they leave the ship and make their way toward the distress signal, while Parker and Brett stay aboard the ship and try to fix it.
Something happened to the ship.
Right.
And this is the classic, the car won't start and our band of teenagers are stuck in the woods. They're isolated.
Absolutely. Ripley now has to go down into the bowels of the ship and try to get Parker and Brett to start working on it because they're saying, we're not going to work on it till we get more money. And in a great foreshadowing, she tells Parker,
If they find what they're looking for out there, does that mean we get full shares?
Don't worry, Parker, you'll get whatever's coming to you.
I thought that was funny.
What's the test in there?
Anyone who's seen the Alien franchise or knows anything about it knows that Ripley is the hero. So that's one of the problems I had going through this, is that I knew that Ripley is the hero, whereas in terms of the film, it's just a motley crew.
Right.
All of them could ultimately be the hero.
Do you know what a warrant officer is? I looked it up and I did a little bit of reading, and from what I could glean through the thicket of military jargon is that a warrant officer is not a commissioned officer, but is somewhere kind of between the commissioned officers and the enlisted men.
That's right.
And
my grandfather was a warrant officer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It is the highest rank an enlisted person can achieve.
Yeah, so
I think.
So Ripley is a leader, but she doesn't have authority. And so I think one of the cool things about the way she's
middle management.
She's constructed is that she has to earn everyone's respect.
Yeah.
And she fails at it continually until the heat is really on and she emerges as the hero. I thought that was well written, and the fact that they chose that rank for her was really insightful.
Right. Yeah. Good. So you picked up on the examination of the space jockey and noticing that it apparently died a very painful, violent death.
Yeah.
As a failed test. I had pointed that out as a potential mentor moment of some outside force saying, this is a bad situation you're walking into.
Right.
Go back. Them ignoring it.
Yeah.
But I could get on board with that, seeing as that as a failed test. This repeated ignoring of warning signs, and then Kane descending into a dark cave in this ship that's just full of, as he says, big leathery objects, eggs or something.
Right.
And yeah, I'm going to go tromp around in this thing. No, I see that and I'm beating feet out of there. I don't know what that is. I had picked as my second test, focusing on Ripley, as Dallas and Lambert return with the wounded Kane and demand to be let back into the ship. And Ripley is adhering to quarantine protocol and refusing to let them in, especially because there's a foreign organism attached to Kane's face. She says,
"Wait a minute. If we let it in, the ship could be infected. You know the quarantine procedure.
24 hours for decontamination.
It could die in 24 hours. Open the hatch."
Listen to me. If we break quarantine, we could all die.
Look, could you open the goddamn hatch? We have to get him inside.
Another moment of foreshadowing. Mm-hmm. And Dallas is saying, I'm ordering you to open this door. So now she's been given an order from her commander, and she again adheres to proper protocol and safety protocol and says, no, I can't let you in.
And as she points out later to Ash, when Dallas isn't on the ship and Kane's not on the ship, she's the ranking officer.
Right.
So she's actually correct from a chain of command point of view.
Right. And that was, I had mentioned that conversation with Ash as another test.
I interrupted you before you could say, Ripley says, no, you can't come in, and Ash subverts her, opens the airlock, and lets him in anyway.
Right.
Totally agree. Those are great tests, and you did a great job of looking at it with Ripley as the hero.
Another test was the medical examination, and I think this is a test for the crew. How do we get this thing off of Kane? Oh, we can't because it's adhered itself to his face. We'll rip his face off if we try to take this thing on. Let's try to cut it off. And then that's when we see the acid blood.
Yeah.
That has been a prominent feature in all of the Alien films. And Parker notices that's a hell of a defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it. Mm-hmm. Which heightens the threat.
For sure.
That not only is this an alien organism, and it's doing something weird to Kane. We don't know what it's doing. Ash says it looks like maybe it's feeding him oxygen, so if we take it off, it might kill him. Because if it's disabled his breathing apparatus. All of these things are clues to the crew that you're in a bad place.
Yeah.
Right now. This is mission critical.
One of the things about this movie that makes it a great horror movie and a great science fiction movie is that there are so many surprising elements. When they cut it open, you expect it to jump up or eat them or scratch them or bite them. You would never have guessed in him, oh, this is the scene where the blood is acid and burns through 3 levels of the ship. That's a total surprise when you're seeing this movie the first time.
I've got 2 more tests.
Okay.
One of them is the face hugger has now disappeared.
Right.
It has detached itself from Kane. So Ash and Dallas and Ripley are in the med bay looking for it. They find it, and Ash wants to save it and study it and take it back to Earth.
Seems dead enough.
Well, good. Let's get rid of it.
Ripley, God's sake, this is the first time that we've encountered a species like this. It has to go back. All sorts of tests have to be made.
Ash, are you kidding? This thing bled acid. Who knows what it's going to do when it's dead?
Dallas, being the captain, says, yeah, do whatever you think is best. And Ripley is thinking, are you crazy? She's at this point the audience saying, what, you're gonna take this thing back with us?
Yeah.
I think that was a kind of a failed test for everybody because Dallas is refusing to heed the warnings. Ripley fails to convince him how bad an idea this is. And then the last test that I saw before getting to approach to the inmost cave is Kane's Last Supper, where the chest burster makes its first appearance.
Yeah.
And everybody freezes. That was their opportunity to kill this thing. And Parker grabs a knife and he starts to go for it. And Ash says, don't touch it, don't touch it. And everybody else just freezes. And the thing escapes.
Interesting.
And that brings us to approach to the inmost cave.
So we're very close to on track with each other.
Okay.
I think you missed one test.
Okay.
And I put
What?
I put the chest burster, which is a great name, in approach. Ripley confronts Dallas in the hallway about Ash, not just about the
I mentioned that.
dissecting. Well, you mentioned that they are in disagreement about what happens with the facehugger, with the dead facehugger.
Right.
What I'm talking about is directly following that scene, Ripley confronts Dallas.
How come I gotta change my mind? All right, the
I'm not
decision's been made.
I'm not trying to change your mind, Dallas. I just want you to listen. Will you listen to? Just tell me how you can leave that kind of decision to him.
Look, I just run the ship. Anything that has to do with the science division, Ash has the final word.
How does that happen?
It happens, my dear, because that's what the company wants to happen.
Did you ever ship out with Ash before?
I went out 5 times with another science officer. They replaced him 2 days before we left Thetis with Ash.
I don't trust him.
So Ripley's now challenging the leader, the captain,
Got it.
about
Okay.
the guy, and Dallas dismisses. That is Ripley's first real act of challenging authority. The airlock thing was just her trying to follow the rules, but this is her confronting the captain about a decision he's just made.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I thought I had said that, but not in the same words that you
All right,
did.
so we're on the same track. That leads us to approach to the inmost cave. Our hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of her quest is hidden. The approach begins with the crew taking off and returning to space. The refinery and the Nostromo together become the inmost cave. And then Ash summons them to the infirmary, and Kane is awake, and he appears healthy and hungry. And then when they sit down to eat, a alien jumps out of Kane's chest, splattering the entire crew with blood, and squeaks away into the bowels of the ship. Now, I didn't see that as a test for the crew because everyone's watching when they try to dissect the facehugger and the blood is acid. They do not know what to do. Like they think they can't touch it. And when Ash stops Parker,
good point.
He's saying, no, don't kill it, the blood. So this for sure is a dramatic turning point. And we've never seen anything like it in a movie before. Maybe Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but we've never seen a totally new enemy appear out of the chest. I mean, it was such a shocking horror moment. So
I think Veronica Cartwright's Lambert, her reaction.
Oh, God.
That is exactly the human reaction to that kind of a situation.
And their conversations where you see Ripley and you see Lambert, their interactions in the movie are, I don't want to call this movie a feminist movie, but I don't know that we've ever seen a horror movie / sci-fi movie with a female protagonist that's the most in control person on the ship. The woman in a horror movie is always hysterical. But in this movie, Lambert isn't hysterical. She's reacting emotionally appropriately to what's going on. And she's rational. She's not like, oh my God. She's like, let's get off the ship now. So in a lot of ways, she's even more commonsensical than Ripley. Like, she's like, let's get off the ship. We'll draw straws. We're all going to die if we don't go. I mean, she's right.
You mentioned that you don't want to call it a feminist movie, but you are familiar with the Bechdel test?
Yes.
Okay.
And it passes the Bechdel test.
Alien is the movie that was mentioned in the comic strip that created the Bechdel test.
Wow. That's amazing.
The two characters are walking down the street and saying, I'll only go see a movie if it has at least two female characters who have a conversation about something other than a man.
Yeah.
And the second character says, wow, that's strict but fair, or something like that. And the first character says, yeah, the last movie I was able to see was Alien.
Wow, that's great. I did not know that. What a great other tidbit. So Vogler calls out one element of the approach called warning. It's good for the hero to go into the main event with confidence tempered by humility and awareness of the danger. And there's also an element called another special world. And that is the universe sending a message. You've entered yet another little special world with different rules and values. And to me, this chest burster qualifies in both those things. It's a warning. You have no idea what you're dealing with now. You thought it was a face hugger.
Right.
No. And two, the rules have changed.
Right.
The two other elements of approach, in my opinion, are the crew prepare to hunt down the alien.
Yes.
Brett has fashioned a cattle prod, that kind of thing. Ash has made a tracking device, which is oddly reminiscent of that squeaky air thing Venkman uses in Ghostbusters. Another Sigourney Weaver movie.
Yes, it is. I thought it looked like a leaf blower.
Yeah, totally. It was totally a leaf blower. So that's a classic approach to the inmost cave. The gunfighter checks his weapons. The crew prepares for battle.
Right.
And then there's another mentor moment here. Dallas goes to talk to Mother, looking for advice. He wants to know if their plan to kill the alien is a good one. What are their chances? And again, Mother offers nothing. This brings us to the segment we like to call
Deal or Ordeal, where Jeff and I have written down on note cards what we think the other has selected as the ordeal of the film, since we disagree on it almost every time.
We should come up with a Deal or Ordeal theme song, and we should also come up with a...
Taylor Jordan, get on that.
Deal or Ordeal, where the hosts enter a segment of the program where they argue and try to guess. All right, so let's exchange cards here.
And I'm going to preface this with saying I don't think I'm right. I don't think that I have picked the right one for you.
Well, shall I read yours first then?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Dan wrote auto-destruct sequence. Okay. No, that's not mine.
Okay.
How about you?
You wrote Ash attacks Ripley, Parker and Lambert kill Ash. Yes. That sequence is the ordeal. That's what I selected as the ordeal.
Interesting.
So you were right.
Okay.
So you get to pick the next film that
I just hit the microphone. I'm so excited. The Journey of Natty Gann will be our next.
Excellent. Now we have reached the ordeal, where the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome their worst fear, and sometimes actually appearing to die. So, We just did Deal or Ordeal. This is where we find out if you and I agree on what the actual ordeal is.
Correct.
The scene that I selected in the ordeal is a little bit past what we just talked about.
Okay.
There were some scenes that I chose for Approach to the Inmost Cave, the end of the Inmost Cave, that we didn't talk about yet. One of them being, you already talked about Dallas consulting Mother about their chances.
Right.
I also included Dallas descending into the bowels of the ship in the air ducts to try to find the alien.
Okay.
With his flamethrower. To me, that was an element of the approach. This is the captain of the ship who doesn't survive this effort. It leaves Ripley in command. But I wonder where you consider the death of Dallas in the sequence.
Well, I'll just tell you, because you've already essentially revealed your ordeal, which is... Why don't you...
My ordeal, yeah. My ordeal is Ash assaulting Ripley after Ripley is left in command, which means that she now has access to Mother.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes to Mother to try to get some answers. Mm-hmm. And she discovers the terrifying truth that the company that they work for has rerouted Nostromo so that it would be in a position to investigate this signal, because the company knows about the alien organism and wants a sample. And that has been Ash's mission the entire time, is to collect the alien organism and see it safely back to Earth. And as Order 937 says, all other considerations rescinded. The crew is expendable. And then the assault of Ash on Ripley, the revelation of what Ash really is. Mm-hmm. Ash exhibits superhuman strength. He sweats eggnog, right? Which is bizarre, and then just tosses Ripley around and knocks her out, but then he rolls up an adult magazine,
creepy,
and tries to jam it down her throat to suffocate her. And at this point, fortunately, Parker and Lambert show up. There's something really wrong with Ash now, and we discover what it is when Parker grabs a fire extinguisher and knocks Ash's head off.
Yeah, we find out that he's made of spaghetti and Mardi Gras beads.
Exactly.
And Alfredo sauce. No,
exactly.
That I had forgotten that Ash was an android when I rewatched this movie.
Oh, really?
I remembered Bishop from Aliens. I remembered there's an android that they distrusted, but I didn't remember. And so this scene was like, oh, yeah, I forgot.
So you didn't remember which character was an android?
I forgot there was an android, period.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I just remember Ian Holmes' performance as the malfunctioning android with his sort of like twitchy eye and his face is twitching and his hand, like he's looking at his hand. Remember when you hear the wind chime and Ian Holmes kind of looks around? That was a mistake. A crew member accidentally bumped the wind chime, and Ian Holm used it like to look all disoriented, like, what was that? And but Ian Holm's performance in that scene is, to me, that's Oscar worthy. So please continue to the end of your ordeal.
I think we've hit the end of my ordeal.
Okay. I disagree with
I know you do.
Everything you just said.
I know you do.
That's all in Reward Seizing the Sword for me, and I'll go into detail about why. My ordeal is scenes that took place in your approach. To me, the ultimate test, risking death to overcome worst fear, is attempting to confront the alien. I mean, this is the innermost cave. Dallas splits up the crew, and they set off to try and kill the alien. And this is where the horror tropes really begin. So Ripley, Brett, and Parker think they're about to trap the alien in a net, because that's going to work. But it's Jones the cat who jumps out and scares the bejesus out of us.
Well, but it's little at the time.
They think it is.
They don't know that it's...
So, but there's the cat jumps out and scares you. Like, it doesn't get more tropey than that.
Sure.
So then the cat runs away, and they send Brett to go find the cat on his own. Like, just go off into the ship on your own and find the cat. That is... I can't imagine Ripley going, yeah, that's going to go well. They would say, forget the cat. We have to find the alien. So
but they want him to get the cat because they don't want the cat to show up on the motion tracker again.
Okay, but go off by yourself and get the cat. That's a horror movie?
You're right. Let's all three of us need to go find the cat again.
Right. This is the horror movie character of even the smart ones start acting as if they've never seen a horror film. They underestimate the risk. They don't stick together. The horror movie trope is the audience is ahead of the characters. We know something horrible is going to happen, and the characters, for some reason, don't. And I totally get it. This is a horror movie. That has to happen. But this was the place where I was like, okay. Brett does find Jones the cat, but then the alien finds Brett and kills him. And oh, by the way, the alien is effing huge now.
Yeah.
Like, well, the last time we saw the alien, it was the size of a large rat. And now it is, man-sized.
Larger than man-sized, yeah.
Also, Jones, the cat, is a fucking sociopath. Like, they cut to the cat watching Brett die, and the cat's like, bored. Like, the cat's not horrified or scared or running away. The cat's just like, yeah, you're getting eaten. What a that cat. Okay, so Dallas leads the charge to trap the alien in the main air duct and blast it out of the airlock. That is their plan. That is the trench. That is the going into the Death Star. Sure. And while Ripley and Ash are manning the main airlock, Parker and Lambert seal up the maintenance hatch. So Dallas is crawling down the hatch with this flaming torch. Now, we've seen Ripley have some hero moments, but Dallas is still the captain. And so Dallas is behaving as the hero here. So he's crawling down this main vent with a flamethrower because apparently smoking and flamethrowers are okay on a starship now.
What?
I just cracked up that they're on a starship and they're smoking cigarettes and they have a flamethrower. Like in every other science fiction story,
70s.
We have to manage the oxygen level and fire is the worst thing that can happen. So he's crawling down. He's going to get the alien. And of course, the alien gets Dallas. That is the death. That is the appearing to die. And now Ripley is in charge. Ripley is now the ranking officer on board.
Yep.
That is the ordeal.
Okay.
Which brings us to Reward seizing the sword. The ultimate boon. Having faced her worst fear, the hero seizes the object of her quest. This was terribly difficult for me. I had to go back into Vogler and really dig in because I think horror movies in particular have a twisted version of seizing the sword. There's rarely a triumphant moment that leads into the darker heart of the third act. It's just bad, 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 death, 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 blood, blood, blood.
Exactly.
So bear with me here as I lead us through it. Back in the mess, the crew all decide under Ripley's leadership that they're going to hunt down and kill the alien. It's killed Dallas. They have to kill this thing. Ash is the only holdback. He says that he and Mother are still, quote, collating. And Ripley says, I have access to Mother now. I'll get my own answers. So this becomes an atonement with the father moment, only it's atonement with the mother. In this step, the hero must confront whoever holds the ultimate power in his or her life. Mother's in charge of the ship. Mother is the figurative mother of the mission. She is the authority through which all orders flow. Mother is the source of, as far as they know, you have to go answer this distress signal. She's the one who woke them from hypersleep. She's navigating the ship, et cetera, et cetera.
Very good.
So Ripley goes to see Mother. Now I have access. I'm in the sealed room with the magic lights. I can ask the computer what's going on. And she, the same way she confronted Dallas about Ash, she confronts why was Ash unable to neutralize the alien. And Mother says, the only information she has is this is for the science officer eyes only. And so this is where you had mentioned earlier that you see the text projected on Ripley's face. And I just thought, is that where Michael Bay got it? Is this the first time in a science fiction movie we've seen this construct of the text being projected on their face? What is that from?
That's common.
But it's like
that was in The Dark Knight.
But this is 1979.
I thought you were going to mention it in The Dark Knight, and you didn't.
I don't understand the choice of that or the genesis of that.
Yeah,
it just doesn't have any bearing on reality. So, and it's just distracting.
It just shows that. I mean, if you've got otherwise you just have a character sitting there looking at something, and unless you've got the screen projected on their face, you don't know what they're looking at.
Well, they cut from the screen to her typing on the keyboard, whatever. Anyway.
You know.
I'll let go. I'm letting go. Okay, so Ripley uses like an override code, and that's when Mother reveals the real mission, gather the specimen, ensure return of organism for analysis, crew expendable. And then Ash appears in the room with her in this, reveal moment where Ripley sits back and there's Ash, and he's been in on it from the beginning. So Ripley runs out of the room after having a very emotional reaction and realizing that Ash has been in on it the whole time and that they're doomed. Ripley tries to get back to the crew to warn them, but Ash traps her. And then the whole sequence you just described of Ash attacking Ripley. So this is why this is Return Seizing the Sword. In Vogler, there are two sections of the Reward Seizing the Sword called New Perceptions and Seeing Through Deception. A hero may be granted a new insight or understanding of a mystery as her reward. Well, the mystery is, why are they pursuing this alien, and why can they not kill it, and why is Ash behaving the way he is? And then she may see through a deception. If she's been dealing with a shape-shifting partner, she may see through his designs and perceive the reality for the first time. Seizing the sword can be a moment of clarity. When I read that, it became clear to me that the reward here is her realization that Ash is a bad guy, that they've been duped the whole time, and that they have to kill this alien.
At that point, they decide to abandon ship.
Bear with me. Parker and Lambert return. They finish off Ash, and he dies the horrible spaghetti and Alfredo sauce death. They plug him back in. They get Ash to say out loud to the other crew members what Ripley's pretty much already discovered, which was this was the plan all along. And Ripley says, we'll take our chances in the shuttle, we'll blow up the ship. And then Parker melts him down. You're right. They decide to abandon ship. To me, that is Reward seizing the sword. That's the end of Act 2.
I agree. That's exactly the moment I have of the Reward.
Boom. That brings us to the end of Act 2. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have Act 3.
Let's have a drink.
I'm ready. I'm going to not guess the names of the drinks because that makes Dan mad because he's afraid that I might guess right, which I never have in the history of the podcast.
One of these days you will. And it's going to be the one that I will be most proud of.
And I'll hurt your
because it'll be the
feelings.
most clever.
And I'll just guess it at random.
And you'll just guess it, and you'll take all the power away. It'll be so sad and disappointing.
You have a dark, dark inner world, Dan.
So this is the segment where every episode I try to find a beverage, a whiskey, a beer, a wine, something that relates to the movie or the book in some way.
I'm ready. So let's see what is in the magic bag. Oh my God, it's a vat of acid. It's eating through the bottle. No, that's actually not happening at all. He has presented me with the bag. Oh, it's clinky. You hear that? Reaching in the bag. Elysian Space Dust IPA from Elysian Brewing. I love it. That is awesome. Brewed and bottled by Elysian Brewing Company, Seattle, Washington, and Fort Collins, Colorado. Make a decision. Where are you from, Space Dust IPA? The hopping is pure Starglow energy with Chinook to bitter and late and dry additions of Citra and Amarillo. It's an ale, alcohol, 8.2% by volume. Let's drink this. Man, that sounds good. I was editing the last episode, and we get to the drinking segment, and there's this perfect bottle pouring noise. And I complimented Dan on how well, he had placed the bottle in front of the microphone. He's, no, I made that noise with my mouth. I'm like, are you kidding me? That was the perfect bottle. I didn't realize that was fake. It sounded so real.
Oh, really? I did it on mic.
I have a bad memory. I'm not paying attention. Can I have the bottle opener, please?
That's have one.
So good. I have a bottle
There's
opener?
one in front of you.
Where?
The crowbar. So as I hold this up to the light, it is a really cloudy beer, hazy, kind of a lemon yellow color. Even the head, which has it's a real nice head. It's like a good inch almost, finger and a half. Even the head is a tint of yellow to it.
Yeah, I would call this...
It's very foamy, very pillowy.
This is like kidney failure yellow. Oh, that's so hoppy. What a great bouquet. Do you call it a bouquet on a beer?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
It's a good smell.
Oh, it's sweet and hoppy and bitter all at once.
Wow.
I like that a lot. What's the IBU on this? Do we know? It's delicious.
My notes say 3, but I'm pretty sure I mistyped.
I'm pretty sure Bud Light is higher than a 3. I'll Google it and put it in the show notes. This is really good.
Hey, Google, Elysian Brewing Space Dust IPA.
Mother, what is the IBU rating of Elysian Space Dust? For science officer eyes only.
Elysian Brewing is in Seattle, Washington. At least that's according to their site. I didn't see anything about Colorado, but you're reading that off the bottle, so
yeah.
I don't think the bottle's going to lie. Why would that be? Why?
I don't know. It says brewed and bottled Seattle, Washington, and Fort Collins. So either they have 2 breweries, or they're bogarting someone else's. I don't know.
Don't bogart that brewery, my friend. Space Dust IPA is available year-round in kegs, 6-packs, 6-pack bottles, I might want to add. I didn't see it in cans. And 22-ounce bottles as well.
I like it a lot.
Cheers.
I'm enjoying this Elysian Space Dust IPA.
I am too. We've gotten really lucky with our beverages. We've gone a whole year with only one beverage that was
Right.
a little questionable, and I don't think it was the brewery's fault.
You think it was the retailer?
I think those cans in shipment from the brewery to the distributor to the retail location, they got too warm and the yeast happened.
This is why we need direct beer and liquor sponsors so they can quality control what they send to us.
That's right.
And speaking of sponsorship, Dan and I have been talking about this podcast. It's been a year. And when we started, we didn't know what to expect. We just knew we wanted to spend time together and talk about movies. And man, we have had a great time making this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. When you pitched it, you're like, "Hey, could be a reason to hang out together."
Right. And you looked at me like, "That sounds like the most uncomfortable thing we could possibly do with one another is record." Because in case you haven't guessed,
I'm such the performer. That's why.
Dan does not consider himself a performer, and so he was very uncomfortable with the idea of doing this podcast. And I was like, "You're going to be great." And
I don't even like talking on a telephone.
The feedback I've received from all our listeners is that you're awesome and they love you. And
well, that's very sweet of you to.
They would be grossed out by me bloviating for an hour about a movie.
This is a pleasant fiction, isn't it?
I'm glad that I'm glad that you're doing this. But so Dan and I have been trying to figure out. So this podcast takes about 80 hours to produce one episode between the two of us, which is essentially a full work week for each of us. We've been trying to justify, like, how can we keep doing this? Because we're both busy, full-time jobs. We're both married. I got a family. We're busy guys. So Dan and I are trying to figure out how we can spend even more time together making even more kick-ass content for you to enjoy. So here's what we came up with. We've created a Patreon page.
You did?
Oh, look, there's a bus coming, and I just got those under it.
Bus driver.
We've created a Patreon page where you can sponsor us at a level that you're comfortable with, and in exchange, you're going to get some kick-ass exclusive content. We're going to create exclusive audio content, video content, and
see me be awkward on video.
Right, yeah, see Dan be awkward on video. Hear outtakes of things that didn't make the show. We've got some really cool ideas on extra content we can provide you that'll give you more of an insight into our process, some tidbits that we're not offering in the regular podcast. And if you'd like to vote on the subject of our next episode, that's an option on the Patreon page. If you'd like to have your name mentioned in the credits of each episode, that's an option on our Patreon page. We're giving you an opportunity to sponsor us, and in exchange, you're going to get cool content and recognition. So take a moment to go to patreon.com/heroesjourney, check out the options, and take a moment to decide if you'd like to become a patron. We're going to take a few minutes to enjoy the rest of our Elysian Space Dust IPA, and we'll be back with Act 3.
Act 3 begins with The Road Back, where the hero is pursued by vengeful forces disturbed when they seized the sword. Because this is a horror film, the characters are constantly being pursued. In this case, there are fewer targets for the alien to choose, and with every character death, Ripley's odds of survival dwindle. So Ash's head has told them that they cannot kill the alien. He says,
Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility.
Which I loved that line. I'm like, you guys are screwed.
That's great.
Such a great line. It's almost like the line in Jaws when Hooper says that sharks are perfect eating machines.
Yeah.
They exist to eat and sleep and make little sharks. And that's it. And
Yeah.
that's what this thing is too.
I mean, this is basically Jaws in space.
So Ripley makes the decision to abandon the ship. They're going to set the self-destruct mechanism. The three remaining crew members, Ripley, Lambert, and Parker, are going to pile into the shuttle and escape. They have 10 minutes once they set the self-destruct. So she's going to prep the shuttle while Parker and Lambert gather supplies. We talk about sometimes the woman as temptress moment. This movie has a kitty as temptress. Jeez. When Ripley is prepping the shuttle and she hears Jonesy mewing over the speakers somehow.
Like that feline sociopath hasn't caused enough mayhem yet.
And so she kind of abandons her task to go find the cat, your favorite cat.
Can we linger on the cat for a second? Because I was remembering what Vogler says about Wizard of Oz, how Toto somehow represents the id or the superego or some kind of psychological function of the hero, the instinct, the amygdala. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but Toto had this representation of, Toto performs all these functions that is like Toto ex machina. Toto saves the day. And
Toto's useful.
yeah, it's like her Patronus or something. But, you know, like the cat is clearly meant to represent some part of the humanity where you can't leave the cat behind. Because otherwise the cat is worthless except for getting people killed, right? Jumping out and making us piss ourselves.
It's the ship's pet. You have pets. If there were a situation, an emergency situation, are you saying you would let Zeppelin burn in a house fire or something, or would you run back in and get her?
I'll be straight up with you. If there was a alien with acid blood that had killed half of my family, I would not go back in for the dog.
Zeppelin's on her own, huh?
It's already killed half of your crew.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Dallas is dead.
Yes.
Ash is a psycho robot that's dead. Cut your losses, dude. And I love cats. Like, I love cats and dogs.
You do. You own cats.
I'm not going back in for the cat.
So they're in this desperate situation now where they are on a race against time.
Right.
During this supply gathering, though, Alien finds and slaughters Parker and Lambert. What I'm curious about is that Ripley runs down the hall toward the screaming, finds the room where Parker and Lambert's corpses are, and there's no alien.
Right.
Like, it didn't wait there for her. It killed them and then left. But anyway, so she leaves, sets the self-destruct. I would say also that, did you watch the director's cut? Have you seen the director's cut?
I have not.
There's a scene at this point in the movie where Ripley finds Dallas and Brett cocooned up against the wall, suspended, like in the air.
Cocooned.
That, remember, like in Aliens?
That would foreshadow.
When they do that in Aliens, because then presumably there's going to be eggs laid there, and Dallas and Brett are going to become hosts. That was cut from the theatrical release.
So
I don't know why. So Ripley makes her way to the corridor that leads to the shuttle, and as she's about to round the corner, she sees the alien waiting in that corridor for her.
Yeah.
So she turns around and runs back to, you have a flamethrower. Why are you carrying the flamethrower around if you're not going to use it?
Well, I think
it's heavy.
I don't think they ever thought the flamethrower would kill the alien. They thought the flamethrower would drive it away, and the only place to drive it is into the shuttle where she wants to go.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's fire. Everything burns.
I don't know. I think the whole point of the flamethrower earlier was to drive it down the shaft to get into the airlock so they could blow it into space. Because, like you said, Ash has already said you can't kill it.
Okay.
So I think that's why she doesn't use it.
I accept that answer.
Okay.
I accept that answer. I feel a whole lot better about things.
Good.
So her path is blocked. She now cannot escape to the shuttle, but she's already set the self-destruct.
Right.
And she's got a 5-minute window to cancel that order before it's too late.
If you thought resetting your Facebook password was hard, you
back down the hall and just misses it by seconds. She goes through the whole rigmarole of trying to reset the coolant and all of that and flip the 2 big heavy switches on the wall, and she's just seconds too late. And now she's got no other option.
But in another great Ripley moment, she's so pissed off that she missed it. She's screaming at Mother and smashes that screen.
Yep.
That was such a human moment, and she is so frustrated. Like, God damn it. This is why I'm going to die, because of a computer not timing it right.
So now she's got 4 minutes and 50-something seconds to get out of there, back to the shuttle. She gets back to the shuttle with 1 minute left to go.
Right.
So she gets in the shuttle, buckles up, launches, and escapes.
That leads us to resurrection. The hero is purified by death, either in a literal or symbolic.
Do you agree that was the road back?
Absolutely.
All of that?
Absolutely.
Whoa!
100%.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Fist bump. Reach across. I can't reach you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Resurrection.
No, it was celebrate where we were. Resurrection. The hero is purified by death, either in a literal or symbolic way, and returns to the land of the living a changed person. Ripley gets back to the shuttle, and the alien is gone. She's just gone.
Hooray!
So everything's fine. So she gets
died in the explosion,
I'm
presumably.
Sure. So she gets in the shuttle with the cat and takes off just in time, and the Nostromo blows up in an explosion to rival the destruction of the Death Star. Yay, no more alien. Everything's fine. So Ripley strips down to her skivvies because you have to be nearly naked for hypersleep, and also because there's no horror movie without a scantily clad woman in danger.
It was probably her jumpsuit was probably really all hot and sweaty and dirty though, and
right. And that's when she realizes that there's a giant alien in the tiny shuttle with her. And also that her underwear is really too small to be doing its job. I don't know. I was 3 when this movie came out, so I don't remember what underwear was like then, but it seems to me that underwear was not adequate for her needs. So now there's a strobe light in the shuttle, so the designer of the ship had either never heard of epilepsy or they just love disco, so naturally the alien is hiding.
It was the 70s.
In the ship where the strobe light is. Now, it was really creepy because it just looks like part of the ship and then the hand comes out.
Yeah.
And that's the first time you really see the alien's hand. And I was disappointed that it was such a human-like hand. Anyway.
Oh, you wanted like tentacled suction cup?
I don't know. The rest of it is so, I mean, Giger was such a, I don't know what drugs he was doing, but it was such an inhuman, I mean, it had a mouth, but then the mouth had a mouth. I mean, it was just so,
what
it was
is that?
So, for lack of a better word, alien. It was a star beast. So she gets into a spacesuit and she blows open the airlock and the thing still won't die.
Yeah.
So she shoots it with some kind of pressurized grappling hook spear gun, because that's something you have in a spaceship, along with your flamethrower. But so she shoots it with the spear gun, and that blows it the hell out into space, but it still clings on. So she fires the thrusters of the ship, and then finally it lets go. So anyway, to me, that's the end of Resurrection.
Okay, so the film ends with the freedom to live, or return with the elixir. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. This is a little bit of a truncated segment in this film because Ripley doesn't actually make it back to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle, but her expectation is that after she puts herself and Jonesy, the cat, into cryosleep, it'll take about 6 weeks to get to the frontier where hopefully, the network will pick her up, as she says.
Right. Yeah. I think
where she will then be awakened and she can tell her story and explain, don't ever go to LV-426.
Right.
In fact, let's nuke it.
Yeah, I think that her log entry is the return with the elixir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Where she states that all members, and she names them as a possibly simply just an acknowledgement that is all of the crew members that were on the ship, but I saw it as a bit of an homage to each one of them, naming each victim.
In that way, it could be a resurrection. She's acknowledging their life even though they're gone.
Yeah.
They live on in her memory of them. Whenever I watch a movie, I try to figure out, other than entertainment, what was there. And Ridley Scott, to me, is a guy who doesn't make movies just to make you laugh or make you scream or make you cry. He's an artist-level filmmaker to me. He's trying to say something. And I found it fascinating that he made a horror movie. And so I'm watching this movie and I'm trying to figure out, what is this movie about? There's one survivor. And it made me wonder if he wasn't trying to say something about the value of human life. I mean, this was the 70s. This was the beginning of the, oh my God, there's an energy crisis, and we were just becoming, it had only been 10 years since that picture of the Earth from the moon had surfaced, and so the environmental movement had just begun. It made me wonder if he was trying to make a statement about the survival of humanity, and is it worth it if one person survives? Does it mean anything if one person survives? What's the value or the meaning of one human life?
Would it change your thought if I told you that Ridley Scott originally had written that last scene for Ripley to die? The alien kills her.
So it would have been a tragedy in space?
And the alien would have been I guess the cat, unless the alien somehow busts open that metal box it was in.
Was it a studio note that had him change it, or did he decide?
Yes. Yeah, no, the studio said, we'll give you... The original end of the movie was shuttle escapes, Nostromo blows up, alien presumably dies on the shuttle. Ridley Scott didn't think that was enough. He wanted to do one more, an Act 4, and that's the last showdown on the shuttle. His original idea was to have Ripley shoot the alien with the harpoon gun, but the alien charges her and bites her head off.
Interesting.
That was going to be the original end of the movie. The studio said, okay, we'll give you the extra week and the extra $500,000 to shoot this scene, but Ridley has to survive. The alien has to die.
Ripley.
Did I say Ridley?
Yeah.
Ridley.
No, it's interesting.
Ridley is alive and well at this point. Thank you.
I think artists sometimes can shoot themselves in the foot. I think a lot of times studios ruin good movies or get in the way of good movies, but I think sometimes artists shoot themselves in the foot. I mean, The revamp of the Star Wars movies is a perfect example where Lucas had to meddle again.
Right.
Because I think it's a much better movie with the scare and then Ripley survived. I would have felt ripped off if Ripley died. I'd have been like, come on, really? After all that? Like, this isn't a tragedy. It's just a...
He did ultimately agree that was the better decision.
Oh, good. So then, no, that doesn't change my opinion.
Okay.
Maybe Ridley was just having a bad week when he decided he wanted to kill Ripley. Well, that's it for this episode, and I get to choose the movie because I won Deal or Ordeal. Join us next month when we take on 1995 Best Picture winner, Braveheart.
Oh!
Yes! I've been wanting to do this movie since we started this podcast.
Yeah?
One of the things I say to my wife is, I love you. Always have.
Always have. Okay. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or Google or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you love what you've heard, please take a moment and leave us a rating and a review and tell your friends to listen. And consider joining our Patreon community. Check out our website at heroesjourneypodcast.com and click on Patreon.
The Heroes Journey podcast is produced by Jeff Garvin and Dan Zarzana. Original music by Taylor Jordan. Thanks to Dean Ethington for designing our logo. And thank you to Elysian Brewing for this awesome space dust IPA that we are enjoying.
Alien is copyright 1979, 20th Century Fox Film Corporation.
Please follow us on Twitter at Heroes Podcast. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Heroes Journey Podcast. And check out our hilarious and informative show notes at heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Until next time,
journey on.